Good morning, America.
So we were talking about bill enforcement agency.
We were going to get right into that, weren't we?
Well, I'll tell you what. I guess we'll start back. Rooster, can you tell us a little bit about your background again? Your dad's a veterinarian.
Oh, yeah. So, I guess back in the early, well, say the late 60s, my father was he was an Army brat. They lived all over the country. He was born in Nebraska. But my father's mother was from Pinola, Mississippi.
Panola.
Pinola, not Panola, the
Oh,
community,
Pinola.
not
Gotcha.
Panola County.
Yeah, I'm thinking like South
You
Panola.
know, it's just like a small community right there in Simpson County. Anyway, long story short, they settled back down there after Papa was out of the military. He was in the Army Air Corps before we had an Air Force. The Air Force was actually part of the Army. He was an officer. Um, they settled down in Pinola, Mississippi, and Pop was the new kid on the block, so to speak. When they settled down, he met Mama, and they settled down and had me and my sister. They both went to Mississippi State. Mississippi State. He got his
Yeah.
undergrad there. Mississippi State did not even have a vet program back then. That's why he went to Auburn, and the government actually paid for him to do that because he was an out-of-state resident back then. You could get a grant, so he went to Auburn for his vet school, and that was at the time, probably still is it was the cutting edge of neurological studies in animals.
Cool.
Yeah, and he got a big old brain, bigger than mine, and he got educated. When he came back to Mississippi, he wasn't just a vet; he was like the vet for like a long way around.
Like somebody that everybody went to.
Well, yeah, not just that. It was like that. Not that many of them. On top of the fact that it wasn't just livestock; it was cats, dogs.
So he did it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was
That's pretty
times
cool.
when I remember as a kid, people would bring, lizards in there, and he was like, he could work on them, but there's like only so much you could do for a lizard.
Yeah.
It's either gonna make it or it ain't. Somebody bought a lizard at the pet store and ate a rock.
Out of curiosity.
To tell you the truth, Daddy's in the back of Daddy's mind. He's like, you know what? There's 100 of them back here in this barn right here. Just go catch one. If you're
Just go
good,
get another
if
one,
you're
man.
good enough, you can. But
Yeah.
Out of
Man.
curiosity, how many in your family that you know of have been involved in the military?
just my grandfather.
I got you. Okay.
No, my grandfather's brother, I think. Can't remember. It was Uncle Glenn died in Vietnam, and then Papaw, my father's father, joined the U.S. Army, and he was an Army Air Corps, the U.S. Army Air Corps. Before we had an Air Force, the Air Force was part of the Army, and he was an officer, and he served in World War II, and they lived all over the world. They lived in Syracuse, New York. Pop was born in Nebraska. His only sister was born in Puerto Rico, and they lived a long time in Panama during the building of not necessarily the building of the canal, but the occupation until we turned it over. Pop tells these stories about going to school and these school buses with these little Panamanian kids, and they're all hanging off the sides of it, and they're going down this what we would call a little one-lane road, dirt road in the country, which was, and all of a sudden it would stop. All these kids would file off of the bus. They're just hanging on the side of it, and they'd run off in the jungle, and they'd be gone like 5 or 10 minutes, and they'd come back and they'd have this massive iguana, right? They'd run off and catch this iguana, and they would cook that thing and eat it that day. That was like the culture there.
Wow.
I can't even say that I wonder what lizard tastes like. I don't know that I would ever even want to find out.
He tells a similar story about I don't we didn't get into that earlier. We lost all that. I think we were talking about how the federal government hired him, commissioned him to go to Haiti to uh, investigate the swine flu outbreak in the late 80s,
Mm-hmm.
which was nothing to do with humans, but they didn't want it to get to the United States because it was going to completely decimate the,
Livestock here.
livestock here. And they pretty much hired him to go over there, and he goes over there, and him and this other doctor, and we're talking about a country where like black magic is
Sure.
a major religion, and we're talking about in the 80s too. And they had done some work to, I'm not going to go into details, but they had done some work to a pig that was not well. And when they got there and they had saved the pig, so to speak, and they'd done well, and they'd kind of proved themselves, I guess, at that point. And it was like kosher that they'd be here and study this epidemic to all they wanted them was to figure out what we needed to do, contain it. But after that particular episode, they were, like way up on the hierarchy system of the village, and the village would have like that's there's those 50 to 30 to 50 pound potbelly pigs was that was their livelihood.
Yeah.
Soil was terrible. There was no.
So they fully depended on that.
Yeah, pretty
on
much,
that
not
animal.
fully, but I mean, there was
Close to
very
it.
little agriculture there because of the poor soil. And so, anyway, in these villages, that's what they would do. They had a guy that would, slaughter and butcher these potbelly pigs. And depending on your level in the hierarchy system of the village, depending on whether you was eating pork chops or pig feet type deal.
Yeah.
Basically. So, long story short,
Whether you get bacon or
after that episode, Pop and his buddies, they were eating pork chops every day. They did well.
That's right.
They did well.
I gotcha. Yeah, we were talking a little bit about Schwab and some other stuff earlier. I believe you were telling us you've got a little bit going on with the TSP, and then you've got your own brokerage account with Schwab, is what you're saying.
Yeah. I had a friend of mine that he's worth a lot of money now. I knew him. We didn't have nothing, but he'd begged me to put a little money into a brokerage account, I guess. And back then it was TD Ameritrade. They had been bought out by somebody else, but now since then they've been bought out again by Schwab. And I basically just put a little money in there and mirror what he's doing, and it's done well. But my TSP account that I've only been investing in for, about 3.5, almost 4 years has probably done the best. And I just got some, it's different funds, and it's basically the S&P, the Dow, the international funds, the NASDAQ, and then they have a government fund, I guess. It's just probably the most
G fund.
secure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, I got some information from a friend of mine. Last year I returned 30%, and put it in 3 different funds and just let it ride. Now I've had several conversations with several other friends of mine who are in different government agencies that, they will move it here and move it there throughout the month, and traditionally are not doing as well as I'm doing. I mean, they were bragging about 12 and 15%,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, yeah, I don't have to watch anything. I just leave it there. And I had, we were at, me and the guy that I was telling you about that talked me into starting another brokerage fund. And him and I were sitting at an airport one night and talking about this, that, and the other, price of eggs in China, and randomly, this guy comes up, and my bag was in a chair next to me, and I moved it so he could sit down, and he was very appreciative. We struck up a conversation. Come to find out, he was a hedge fund operator and from
Oh, wow.
Austin, Texas, right? And, we're just all shooting the shit. And at some point in time, it turns to, I let him look at my portfolio. I mean, it wasn't nothing like, just let him look at it on my phone. He was like, man, you're killing it. Just keep doing that. And I'm like,
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree with
10-4. Roger that.
When you said 12 to 15 earlier, those are really good returns.
Yeah.
It's just that yours are exceptional.
I'm just, yeah. And it's like beginner's luck. Beginner's luck, I guess. Like, literally, I've only been 3 years I've been in the TSP.
Well, don't be disappointed with your little measly 15 to 20
No,
if you
no,
happen to
no.
move down.
Look, I come up, Daddy was a veterinarian, but he came up real poor. I say he came up poor. He worked his ass off. They had chicken houses when Granddaddy got out of the military. They ran chicken houses, and Papa worked him like a Hebrew slave. They did okay, but it was we're talking about a man that grew up during the Depression and was raising his kid, and the little bit extra he got out of the military he was putting back. They've done well for themselves, but
Yeah, no, to go from poverty to a successful veterinarian, I would say is pretty good. You're doing pretty well. I was asking you earlier, I think you said that he wasn't necessarily running his own business, that the government sort of covered his degree or something like that.
well, so he got his undergrad at State in the '60s, and then their state did not have a vet program yet. Mississippi State did not yet have a vet program, so the closest place to go was to Auburn, and so there was a program back then where, yes, the federal government, as an out of state resident, paid for him to go to Auburn to get his to go to vet school, his
Hmm.
veterinarian license, and then similar to doctors, you don't just go to school and here you go, start doing brain surgery. Of course, I'm not a doctor. I don't know how this works, but I got a reasonable idea. But, they don't just, you got to do a residency, so
Oh
to
yeah.
speak, Well, vets are the same way. And he set up shop in Simpson County there in Mississippi. And he was the vet for a long way around. And he actually had an apartment set up at his practice for people to come do their residency, and that has benefited me over the years. There was a gentleman that did his residency under him that went on to be one of those doctors that specialized in the reproductive organs
Mm.
or in the reproductive process in animals, dogs, and cats. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. I'm just going to say that's what he does. And he remembered me from a young child doing his residency at my father's practice, and he was more than willing to help me out. He's a good man.
Networking is always good, no matter
Yeah.
what field you're in. Did and you may not know this. I was just going to ask: how long did your dad know that was what he wanted to go into?
Can't. Well, that was he, like I said, he did that. I was still,
I got you.
you know, I was hanging out with him, and he dropped me off with Mom at that party at that night. Yeah, that was first time I really, that's the first time I really left
I
Pop
got
was
you.
when
I
he was
got you.
hanging out with Mom at that party that night. That's all I really know. So I don't know.
I
He
got
was
you. And how long has he been in that field?
since the '60s.
Wow.
Well, I say since the early '70s.
Wow.
He probably started that practice in Mendenhall in the early '70s. Yes.
Wow. Long career.
Yeah, he was. There's actually a picture of me in Mississippi State. Years later, obviously they established their own vet program, and for many many years they would invite him to give. They would invite him to put. Well, they put call it opinions in medical journals,
Sure.
and he would do seminars at Mississippi State. I remember one year where we were at somewhere close to Starkville, they had this skeet shooting facility, and we got to go shoot skeet for free. I remember that was like big in the skeet shooting at the time. I loved that.
Sure.
But there's actually he's still got a copy of it somewhere. I'm sure nobody cares about it now, but there's a medical journal somewhere with him holding me and my sister in his arms. We're like little kids, but There's a picture of him in the medical journal there. His name's Robert Kennedy. Robert Keith Kennedy. I was named after him.
Speaking of which,
Some point in time, I got dubbed Rooster.
speaking of which, are you? And if you don't want to talk about some of the stuff, just let me know. But are you related to President Kennedy by any chance?
Well, to tell you the truth, there's my grandfather. His father did a lot of research on our family and really isolated his line all the way back to some castle in Scotland. But if you want to go further back into the Kennedy clan that came out of Scotland, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I can give you any kind of a whole lot of names, but I've done a lot of research on it, and I can't remember the names. But the Kennedy clan was kind of Scotland was kind of formed out of a lot of different people, but there was one certain people that started with an S, and they kind of really colonized Scotland into clans, and there was two different families, I guess, that originated.
Clans were basically like tribes, right?
Yeah, I guess you could call it that.
Yeah.
They were, yeah, and that heritage is still. We still have a family crest, family tartan, and a logo, which is funny. I don't. My grandfather dug all this up, man, and our family, logo is the ugly head or the misshaped head. So we got apparently we had ugly heads. I don't know,
Yeah.
but if you want to go back into the President Kennedy and that whole line generally came from one line. I mean, it got spread out. Obviously, same way Adam and Eve did. But there was a lot of turmoil and I want to say land grabbing in the Kennedy clan. And if you really get deep into the history of the Kennedy clan, JFK was not the first assassination by any stretch. There was a lot of, I mean, it's,
Yeah. No, I mean, it's back in the day,
Yeah.
assassination was the
Right.
norm.
yeah.
It's only
So,
in modern society that,
So
you know,
if I can't definitively say that I'm directly related to JFK, all I can say is somewhere along the line, I have a strong tie to that bloodline.
yeah, I got you. Yeah, I mean, relation is relation, whether
It
it's
is what it
doesn't mean you have to be his first cousin, you know.
I could say my bloodline is strongly Scottish in that there's not just a Kennedy clan. There's also a Keith clan, which was also a family name. My father's name was Robert Keith Kennedy. My name is Keith Dow Kennedy. So there's a very strong tie to Scotland.
Yeah.
But for now, it's just Rooster.
I got you.
It's easy to remember.
Yeah, and just to switch topics a little bit again, we were earlier when we were talking about the TSP. For those of you watching, if you don't know what a TSP is, it's basically like something that the United States government gives federal employees and maybe some others, but mainly federal employees access to. It's basically like their 401k. You have a C fund, an S fund, an I fund, and a G fund, I believe. Your C, either the C, I think the C is the S&P 500, the S is the small caps, I is international, and G is treasuries. I think that's right.
I'm sorry. The
The
the main ones are the CSI, yes.
yeah
G.
is like treasury bonds. I is international. C is S&P 500,
Yeah. Yeah.
and S I think is small caps.
There's other funds that my father has introduced me to that basically I think they're all like different F funds. But to the best of my knowledge, that's something that he got into later on, in that there are various funds that will keep X amount of dollars in like a G fund, a more conservative fund, and then X amount of dollars contributing to a more aggressive fund. And he did that later on in his career, in that he couldn't afford to, if the market just had some major crash, he couldn't
Mhm.
afford to have all of his money in all these aggressive funds. So
Yeah.
you've got X amount of money over here that's, not going to be tremendously affected by a major market crash. And then you've got contributing funds going in over here that are in more aggressive funds to grow money in the meantime. Does that make sense? That's
Mhm.
the way he explained it to me. That's the way I understood it anyway.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense. It's basically just those are, the government's equivalent of and on the civilian side, like I said, what you have with the S&P 500 or the Russell 3000, the Russell 2000, which are mid cap and small caps. Uh, and if any of you don't know what ETFs are, that stands for exchange traded fund. And these are sort of the modern equivalent of what mutual funds used to be. They're basically like a better replacement for mutual funds, in my opinion, because take SPY, which tracks the S&P 500, for example. It You can buy into just that one fund and you get all 500 of the top companies in the United States. So to me, ETFs are just like a more modern and better version of what mutual funds used to be. Um, but yeah, so that's basically what he's talking about with the TSP is those different funds replicate, like I was saying, the S&P 500 or some international fund or something like that. But yeah, I tend to find, like you were saying, that if people leave their money sitting around as opposed to moving it all the time, you tend to have a lot higher returns. And everybody, especially experts and professionals in the industry, they always tend to overestimate their abilities to get in and out at the right time. And then you have a lot of people that try to day trade, but if you listen to guys like Warren Buffett and some of these other billionaires, they'll be quick to tell you that 95% plus of day traders lose money. So almost none of them make money. What you'll hear them say is they'll say, "Hey, I made $1,000 today," but what they won't tell you is the
The
next
five
day
thousand
that
dollars they lost for the rest of the week.
yeah, yeah. So they'll tell you the days that they're up, but they rarely tell you when they lose money. And I say all that to say, when I first began my investing journey, I did a little bit of that active day trading until I started watching a lot of clips of guys like Buffett saying that all of that is basically, I mean, I don't want to call it a hoax, but I mean, it sort of is. It's the reason it's so unpredictable and not reliable is because supply and demand is not something that you can quantify yourself. Like, and what I mean by that is you can't, you never know from one day to the next if a random person is going to buy something or sell something. So the unpredictable nature of that means that no day trader, even somebody with 30,000 hours of experience like me, none of us can ever say for sure what's going to happen in the short term to a stock because it's completely random. So anyway, that's I hope that explains why it's so difficult because nobody can truly account for what any one individual is going to do.
It's a true gamble.
It if you just buy one stock at a time and you do day trading, it's definitely a big gamble. But if you do like we're talking about and you follow the S&P 500 or something like that, to me, yeah, I mean, if you want to call it a gamble, fine. But I mean, almost everybody that's done that has made a lot of money. Maybe you can call that a gamble and you're the house. That's if you're buying the S&P 500, it's sort of like, I don't know. I don't want to, this might be a bad illustration, but sort of like owning the casino itself a little bit.
Sure.
Um, Not that we want to be involved in casinos, but yeah, that's,
They make money.
yeah, no, yeah, they do make money. That's true. But we care a little bit about morals and ethics, and
That's right.
casinos aren't the most ethically sound way to make money. But then again, a lot of these big corporations do some shady stuff too. So
Amen.
it's definitely important to screen your investments financially, but ethically as well, and make sure that these folks align with your
And
moral.
All money ain't good money.
That's right.
and some of the people with the largest jail sentences are former hedge fund operators.
That's right.
And they're probably in some nice federal prison
That's
playing
right.
tennis or something.
Yes.
That's right.
Have y'all? This is kind of off topic, but have y'all ever seen the movie Goodfellas, or have you ever seen it?
Yes.
It-
Thinking Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, well, Wolf of Wall Street's another example too. Like, didn't he end up? You see him in like a
Yeah,
garden.
he's literally, like you said earlier, he's literally playing tennis, and this is the American version of Escobar's
Yeah.
prison.
No,
Yeah.
no prison farms for those guys.
No.
And in my opinion, I don't know. I'm getting off topic again, but I almost kind of wish prison farms would come back, but because it's like we've got all these high food prices. Why not? I don't know. Let folks that are in prison grow.
I don't see a problem with it, to tell you the truth. I was
Yeah.
reading an article the other day about this, and he's been doing this for years. But there's a sheriff out in Arizona, and I can't call his name.
I know who you're
But
talking
he
about.
makes them all wear pink,
Yeah.
and at some point in time, if they wanted to watch TV, they had to, run a stationary bike in
Yeah,
order to
to
power
power
the
it.
electricity to watch the TV. But
Yeah.
there was, and that's one thing. But there was another article and the other day, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was some kind of, you know, uh, some kind of program he had put in place to where they were actually, being some sort of productive member of society. I don't remember exactly what it was. I wish I could remember. I wish I could find the article, but that's it. You messed up. Okay. But I'm not saying let's bring back the chain gang and whip and beat everybody into submission. If you're willing to, if you're willing to go to work and work
Yeah.
off a debt, I don't see where that's I don't see where that's a problem.
Well, it basically exists in other forms, not, I mean, I don't know about the farm thing, but nowadays, and by the way, I don't think I've ever said this on the podcast, but I was actually a corrections officer for, I don't know, somewhere between 3 and 5 years, but there is a thing that exists now where some inmates are called trustees and they either work in the kitchen or they work, doing something like that. So, and that seems to be a good setup for a lot of penitentiaries and jails and so on. But so I say all that to say I'm not against them having certain privileges, even something like TV, but I just don't think all of those things need to be taxpayer funded. I think that the inmates can be completely self sufficient, except for maybe medical costs, and that sort of thing is going to be a different matter. But and like I was saying, I don't see why they can't help our country grow a lot more food to lower our food prices.
Well, punishment is punishment. When did we become a society that said making people work out in a garden to provide food for a community was cruel and unusual punishment?
Yeah, that used to be the norm. That used to
that's
be
right.
what everybody did back prior to the
That's right.
industrial revolution.
One of the selling points of that article that I was reading that I was telling you about was the fact that our U.S. military serves at their will and pleasure under a lot worse conditions
Absolutely.
than a lot of these people have it. And, if it's not,
If it's good,
if it's not cruel and inhumane for our servicemen, how is it cruel and inhumane for somebody that broke the laws of society
That's right.
paying a debt?
That's right.
Yeah,
And
I was in the Army National Guard for 9 years, and not that that's, don't get me wrong, it's not a difficult, you know, it's not as hard as being active duty for 9+ years, but training to me was pretty difficult. You'll have people that'll downplay it and act like it's not that bad because everybody wants to seem like some kind of super soldier. But I remember there was a point where I went 2 days without eating. There was a point where I went 2+ weeks without showers. And that is probably considered mild compared to what some deployed soldiers have probably been through. especially prior to modern conflicts like Vietnam and World War II. I'll bet some of those guys probably went months without showers in some
Yeah,
instances.
if it's not cruel and unusual for what our soldiers had to go through in Iraq or Afghanistan desert, with the conditions they had to live in, then it shouldn't be over here.
Agreed.
But I mean, like I was saying though, I'm not even saying that we have to I'm not saying we should drastically reduce their quality of life in there. I'm just saying that they should be able to, provide more.
It should at least be equal.
Yeah, and they should be able to provide more for society to pay off that debt, like you said, so to speak.
Well, they've
Um,
already, it's not like they were just taken off the streets and put in that situation. They earned their way there.
yeah,
So I mean,
absolutely.
that's the reason that they really shouldn't have a say. And honestly, these people who bellyache and moan and complain about the conditions, they had probably haven't had a family member suffer.
They,
That's right, at the hands of the convicts.
yeah, yeah. I, even like I said, if it's just purely from an economical standpoint, I just, I think, and like you were saying, everybody thinks of chain gangs and people getting beat. We don't need all that. I mean, you'd have to have somebody supervising them in a golf cart or something, or
Well, I
which,
mean, and you look at the other side's opinion. I mean, we live in a day and age right now where people are protesting in the streets because they don't want you to send illegals who have committed crimes back to their home country. That's what we deal with now. So it's not just that they want the right thing to be done. They don't want you to punish the wrongdoers either.
yeah, yeah, which you can't have. Like I don't remember when this happened, but sometime within the past few years, California's had this thing, and I don't know if it's all over the state or if it was just Los Angeles, but supposedly they made it to where, and I could be a little bit off on my number here, but something like under $1,000, if you lifted that from a store or did that much damage to a store, like they wouldn't even come after.
That's right.
It was something like $1,000 and under, and people were going in stores and snatching stuff and
That's
weren't
right.
being prosecuted or chased after.
And stores are actually having to close because of that shrinkage, and which is just completely asinine to me.
Yeah, no, I try not to be too politically biased, but I think Gavin
Gavin
Newsom
Newsom's
is
an
a
idiot.
complete moron. Yeah, if I'm being
I'll say
honest,
it for you if
I
you don't
think
want to say it.
no, I'm happy to say it. I think he's a moron. But I don't mind somebody, obviously I lean right a little bit. I don't mind somebody that leans a little bit left, but to me, somebody like him is going to destroy your state eventually. And he might eventually be a candidate for the top job, and that is
Well,
scary.
I was about to say, and the Democrat Party wants him to be president.
Yeah, no way in hell. Not I don't I don't want to see that happen. But we have no control over that, so it's up to the voters what they choose. And another strong contender is gonna be AOC too,
When
so
she gets of age.
yeah, she's when she gets of a wait, is she under the how old do you have to be? I forget.
Got to
30
be
something
you
or
have to be 40 by the time you're sworn in.
40? Really? I
Yeah.
thought it was 30s.
So I think it's 40. Let me check that.
I
But
think it's
yeah,
35.
either way though, 35.
Okay, okay.
Jack, was that you?
Yeah.
Hey guys, I don't think I've introduced Jack to you, but Jack might be our next producer, so that's who's talking on the mic. So say hey to Jack. We're happy to have him.
Everybody.
Yeah, he's super helpful. It's nice to have a producer now. Yeah, yeah, we're glad to have you, man. But yeah, what were we? I sort of lost my train.
Yeah, got to be 35 by the time you're sworn in to be president.
That sounds
Okay.
about right.
Cool.
Now here's the thing. Regardless of who she ran against, well, and this is the case with most people who either call themselves Democrats or Republicans. They're going to vote for whoever their party puts up. But she would have an abundance of support because she's a charismatic person who they all like. Put her politics aside, which are atrocious. She would vote for it.
It's a popularity contest.
That's
with
right.
them, and it doesn't matter what they're saying.
That's right.
It could be anybody up there as long as they're preaching the Democratic.
That's right.
What I
left wing Reddit get.
And that's one of the
They're all for it.
That's right. And that's one of the things that the Democrats have going for them is that you're gonna get the votes as long as you promise the people that they're gonna keep getting their pet
Free
money or
stuff.
project or whatever. That's right.
Yeah.
All their entitlements. If you promise that they're gonna get their entitlements, you're gonna get their vote.
Yeah. And don't get, if we can find ways to have nice things for everybody, then fine. But my thing is like, we have to keep running the numbers and make sure that we're not going broke like we have been here lately.
And
We can't get into
at
it.
the end of the day, if you want it, work for it, and you can have it. But
Yeah.
the Democratic
Yeah.
Party, you know, traditionally is just, well, I say traditionally, that's been their LBJ.
Yeah.
Let's go back to
Well,
LBJ, man.
well, and this is, free is like you said, free is always good. However,
It's from somewhere.
yeah, that's how you get to be $37 trillion in debt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, free, there's really no such thing as free because somebody else's time, labor, and so on produced a result. And now for some reason you think you're entitled to somebody else's result, which people think equality means equality of outcome, but really what equality is supposed to mean is you have the same opportunity to do what somebody else did. Not that you automatically get their result for work that you didn't do. But anyway, and that goes for billionaires too. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm not just talking about the average man here. Just because you're a highly successful billionaire also doesn't mean that you get to abuse the system either. So we we have a lot of work to do to realign our political system. And speaking of all that, another thing that I think some buddies of mine and I agree with this really can't stand about our political system now is it's almost like it's turned into my team versus your team, or like a people talk about politics like they would talk about football or baseball or something like that,
Yeah.
which to me is a big problem. I don't know. You hope that eventually we can.
All of the moral standards, the economic ramifications be damned. It's like a popularity contest. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely feels that way here lately.
Last October, she turned 35. So next election cycle, she could run.
Okay. Well, cool deal. Well, guys, I think it sounds like Jack's fixing to get wrapped up here pretty soon. So I think we'll probably call it here. But man, thanks for coming out today. We appreciate you joining us.